Gardenia! Happy Friday. Welcome to Adam versus the Man. Another week in the can. Check. You made it to the good news. That's right. We got a lot of good news for you today. We got a great guest. Scott Horton joins us at the top of the hour. And we have a lot of just really good news stacked up. We have a little bad news, I guess we got to get out of the way, doing our journalistic responsibility here. It's not that bad. It's going to drive people to warmer climates. I guess first is a just heads up news story. Got to let everybody know Denver may be getting its biggest snowstorm since 1885. Excuse me. Yeah, 1985. Maybe that wouldn't be such a big deal, right? But 1885, yes, this is from AccuWeather.com. And here in Gardenia, we have snow. It's snowing right now. I went and took a shower in our outdoor shower in the snow while it was snowing. Awesome experience. There's about, I don't know, inch of snow on the ground in some places here, but it looks like Denver, let's see, what are they going to get? The looming storm threatens to be a long-duration event that could result in snowfall totals nearing 2 feet in Denver and piling as high as 3 feet in places west of Denver, such as Boulder and Fort Collins. Heavy snow will stretch north into Wyoming as well. The wintry blast could feel all the more shocking because it is following closely behind spring-like weather in some places like Denver, where temperatures have been averaging nearly 20 degrees above normal, hovering at or just under 70 degrees each Sunday through Tuesday. Well, that makes me feel a little bit better about our experience here in Gardenia because, man, it was nice here last week. I was out working the chainsaw without a shirt on, getting some sun, some highs in the low 70s. It was nice, unseasonably warm, and now we have this freak cold week here, but very excited. Our friend Patrick, Pat 420 Pat Rock, joins us here in Gardenia now, and yesterday already jumping in, got some great firewood cut and some timbers prepared for some very large beams, like 16, 20-foot long pieces of wood, cutting them out of trees here for posts and beams for our deck. Very exciting project. Hopefully we'll have stories for that for you at the Garden of Freedom on Instagram by the end of this week. And we got to do some progress photos as well. So check that out at thegardenofreedom.com or at the Garden of Freedom on Instagram. There's my view yesterday morning with the snow and the picture there. Adam Kokesh is recruiting. That's right. Big changes here in my world and Adam versus the Man universe. Our executive producer CJ, today is technically his last day after an epic year as executive producer. Here's to CJ Abernathy from South Dakota. That's right, he's getting promoted to business manager, and so our co-host Jim is getting promoted to executive producer. And we have Mercedes Dan Rutowski from Nebraska filling in as comment Mercedes today, getting your comments up on screen. She's going to put something really snarky now just to throw me off. So for Adam versus the Man, we are recruiting, and it looks like we're going to have like a rotating cast of co-hosts. So it might be a lot of fun. Stephen McClure with Homefront Battle Buddies taking charge of that right now, and Homefront Battle Buddies also recruiting for that, especially for board member positions. Looks like we're going to be hosting our first retreat, April 30, the Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday, May 1st and 2nd here in Gardenia. And the main purpose of our first retreat is to bring the board together and create a more comprehensive vision for Homefront Battle Buddies. So if you're interested in helping out, remember our mission is to create a community of veterans through online organizing and in-person retreats to facilitate veterans helping each other pursue alternative healing therapies and transitioning to civilian life. And it's sad, that there's, when I think about this, sometimes I'm afraid, like, is it passe at this point? Didn't we take care of that veteran suicide and PTSD problem years ago when it was making headlines? 22. Oh no, it's been swept under the rug. Yeah, and even though years have passed since the bulk of my generation of combat veterans has been has come home, there's still those getting put in regular combat posts and being subjected to trauma in the name of the global war of terror, and so even without that, there's an ongoing need, and I think that the niche that we're creating is really important because it's about pursuing alternative means outside of official channels. And for a lot of us, working with the VA is, let's just say, problematic for a number of reasons. And then, of course, here in Gardenia, we have the Gardenia Sovereignty Project. You can apply for a government job. That's right, in a new voluntary micronation. So if you're interested in any of that, send me an email, adam@thefreedomline.com. We do actually have a lot of good news to get into today. And before we get into, one other really important announcement here, since this is also our last show in this time slot. Yeah, the network is just all over us going, hey, we're going to promote you. We got to get you on earlier. And they convinced us we're going to move an hour earlier. So instead of 9 to 11 Pacific, we are on 8 to 10. Wait, no. Instead of 9 to 11, 9 to 11 Pacific, we're going to 8 to 10 Pacific. And with the time change and us not doing that, because we don't play that in Arizona. No, we do not do daylight saving. None of that silliness. Don't forget that's happening this weekend. So if you're not cool enough to live in Arizona, you're gonna have to adjust your fucking clocks because government is fucking with your time, and you got keep up. All right. So spring forward this weekend. I don't know when it happens. What, Saturday night, Sunday night, whatever it is. You're gonna wake up and go, shit. I got an hour less sleep last night. If you weren't planning for that, but of course, Arizona, we don't deal with any of that. But starting next week, this show will be airing from 8 to 10 a.m. Pacific time. So get ready for that adjustment. And comment Jim Freedom coming on as executive producer. Moose Girl. Oh, wait, Arizona's cool. They don't do. Exactly. All right. So before we get into our traditional Good News Friday, because Good News Friday, we want to send everybody off to the weekend with a smile on their face, but also we want to, when you're covering current events, and like the journalistic concept of Adam versus the Man, wanting to give you an accurate worldview or a practical worldview, it's really easy to get caught up in the 24-hour news cycle, and it's be afraid of this, be afraid of that, bad news, bad news, bad news. So every Friday we do the cutting edge of good news of human optimization, cutting edge technology, tech innovation, exploration, alien life, and understanding nature. I gotta say, I'm really glad we included this alien life segment in the show, but it's been a little thin on stories lately. Today, though, we do have one talking about UFOs, and our guest Scott Horton, just incredible anti-war activist writer, antiwar.com, someone I've known from the beginning of my anti-war activism days with Iraq Veterans Against the War. So we're going to get to all that in today's show, but first, before we get into that cutting edge of good news, we had some unusual good news that I just had to include in today's broadcast. So without further ado, Deadline.com. Newsom recall effort organizers announce over 2 million signatures collected, reaching goal. Yeah, I love the graphic here. It's got Gavin Newsom with his hand on his face, like, fuck. Yep. And it says over 2 million signed petitions. Governor Gavin Newsom failed at his job and destroyed the lives and businesses of too many hardworking Californians. By the way, I signed this petition. I'm technically a California voter still, and semi-legally, I don't know, vote in California. So I signed this petition, and I'm excited. Late Wednesday night, the group organizing the recall of California Governor Gavin Newsom announced that it collected over 2 million signatures. Orrin Heatley, chairman of the California Patriot Coalition Recall Gavin 2020 Committee, said in a statement, "The people of California are speaking loud and clear. We have cleared another milestone. Politics as usual in California are over as we know it to be." Now, there is another recent historic recall in California with Governor Gray Davis and, the rolling grayouts with the power system in California under his watch that gave us the governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I'm excited about this because of a shakeup in politics. It's always going to be exciting. People considering these things, people weighing in on their discontent, like, hey, things are so bad, we just got to replace this governor. That's pretty huge in and of itself. Now, I don't want to overplay that though, because as you know, I've got that sort of cynical libertarian perspective where I see something like this, as much as I want to smile and celebrate and rub it in everybody who voted in Gavin's nose that tough shit, he's out. This is not. I mean, what is this? The people telling the powers that be, without even knowing who they're talking to, we don't like the figurehead that you've given us. Give us a new figurehead. Give us a new front man. Give us a new salesperson to sell us your bullshit and your tyranny and your exploitation. We're not happy with Newsom anymore. And there are a lot of reasons. This is that you might, if you see it that shallow, right? If you see that as I do, as a lot of libertarians do, the bigger picture of politics, and we understand that is Governor Newsom, and I don't want to say that politicians are puppets. I think it's more accurate to say they're power brokers. They decide what strings to attach themselves to get themselves to the top. But is it really a change in the for the powers that be that Governor Newsom gets recalled? Not really, but it gives them a sort of limit, right? It puts a limit on their power as well, knowing, oh man, we fucked with think of them like as Governor Newsom as their car. They're driving the car, and shit, we ran it a little too hard. We blew out the clutch. We didn't change the oil off enough. We got to ditch this car and get a new one. They're still going to get where they're going, but it does slow them down a little bit, at least, to have to go through this. And a little bit, is it significant? Is government going to grow slower because we did it? We got Governor Newsom recalled. Maybe not significantly, and really not just because of this. But part of the fun of this is that you go to a special election to replace them. So let's get into the mechanics of this real quickly here. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, comment question today. Blow Mercedes' mind. That's right. Mercedes is on the comments, and today she gets to give away membership in the Producers Club. So you've been trolled. Let's not forget Governor Wildstar's sentencing is today. Thank you very much for that reminder. We do have someone, we do have a friend of the show, Nick Wildstar, is running for governor in California and is getting ready to run in this special election. So he is being sentenced today for what was recording in a courtroom. I mean, God, it is one of the most offensive, victimless crimes for government to pursue in persecution against an individual. So best of luck to Nick Wildstar today. But I'm also hoping that, if he does go to jail, all right, he'll be running for governor from jail, might give him an edge in this particular special election. So the signatures will be looked at by officials in each of California's 58 counties to ensure their legitimacy, according to a California Patriot Coalition press release. 1.8 something million signatures have been pre-verified internally through an outside third-party vendor. The signatures will now go to registrar of voters' offices in each of California's 58 counties for verification there. The press release says that 1.8 million signatures have already been turned in to county officials. Organizers have until March 17 to gather signatures. Election officials have until April 29 to verify them. If more than 1.497 million are valid, and that, it looks like the article cuts off there. Early media reports peg validation by local officials running above 80%, supposedly a high number, which if it continues would mean the effort will more than qualify. So this is one of those things where you need a certain number of signatures. You get way more because you're not. A lot of them are going to be disqualified, especially by people who work for Governor Newsom. So about this, the governor has said, he's not worried about it. He's focusing on the work before him as governor. Sure. But he did give a State of the State speech Tuesday and said, quote, "So to the California critics who are promoting partisan power grabs and outdated prejudices and rejecting everything that makes California great, we say this: we will not be distracted from getting shots in arms and our economy booming again." Yeah. Okay. So if this is successful, they go to a special election. And remember, this is when it was the governor. It was like the governor versus 3 porn stars and a bunch of political has-beens, and even I think anyway, it was an exciting thing to watch. And I remember as a kid, paying attention at least from a distance, going, all right, we're going to get a new governor. Interesting. And then it's the governor. All right, New York. So we have more political good news. We got to get out of the way. I know, try to stay away from politics on Fridays, but this is just too good to celebrate and to not celebrate. And again, to put it in perspective, like this isn't good news. Like, hey, the American people are waking up to this or that, or there's some fundamental change in policy. This is sort of personality shuffling, but at almost the highest level. I mean, governor, right? So here we go back now to New York. New York from FoxNews.com. New York State Assembly taking first steps to impeaching Cuomo. The news comes as the state filed a police report on an alleged incident involving potential criminal conduct. The New York State Assembly is opening an investigation with full subpoena power, the first step in pursuing a potential impeachment of Governor Andrew Cuomo amid sexual misconduct allegations. As Democratic Assemblyman Ron Kim said in a statement, quote, the Democratic Congress is taking the first step toward impeachment by opening an investigation with full subpoena power to obtain facts and testimonies under oath. Some members, including myself, argue that we had enough admission to proceed with impeachment today, but the Congress is leaning towards setting up the process and structure toward impeachment. So, I don't want to, this is, count chickens before they're hatched. But if we get to see these two great pillars of American statism, is that giving them too much credit? Newsom and Cuomo going out, then that could be fun to watch. So NBC News, we have one more. I guess sort of two more. Wait, is that now? What section did I put that other story in? Is that human optimization? No, okay, this is in random good news. Okay, but first, two financial random good news things today. NBC has this. Stimulus checks could hit some bank accounts as soon as this weekend, White House says. A year into the pandemic, more than 18 million people are still receiving some form of unemployment benefit. Now, don't misunderstand me in saying that this is a good thing in and of itself or altogether, right? That the government is going to borrow $20,000 in your name and then give you $1,400 back. No, this is fucked up. But hey, I guess what? It's a lot better than them borrowing $20,000 in your name and saying, sit and spin, go fuck yourself, keep suffering. No. So what does this represent? And there's an acceleration of cash liquidity into the economy, prices inflate, prices going up, the price inflation as opposed to real monetary inflation that we're experiencing right now. Well, we're getting both. If you go spend that $1,400, and get a chunk of cheap plastic shit from Walmart, good for you. If you need that, if you want that, take back from the system a little piece of what's been stolen from you, however you want. That's what this is. And so if it's happening sooner, hey, get ready, guys. Go party this weekend. Hopefully you can check your bank accounts. For mine, I remember my mobile app was not functioning when the first COVID relief checks hit because they were overwhelmed. Okay. So, final bit of good news before we get into our normal good news segments. Markets Insider, the son of gold bug and Bitcoin critic Peter Schiff moved 100% of his portfolio into the cryptocurrency. Yeah. Sorry, you lost your son here, Peter. On the most. Hopefully we can get. We've had Peter Schiff on the show a number of times. Hopefully we can get him back on Adam versus the Man soon to talk about this. But this is like wow. Bitcoin critic Peter Schiff's son has moved all of his portfolio investments into the cryptocurrency. Schiff called his son brainwashed and said he needs to disinherit him or his money would be wasted. Whoa. Huge generational divide here on crypto. The wealth manager regularly clashes with crypto advocates over his Bitcoin predictions, which so far have not been very good, right? So Spencer Schiff, the son of Bitcoin detractor Peter Schiff, has decided to move 100% of his portfolio investments into the world's most popular cryptocurrency. And as Peter said in a tweet Thursday, my son at Spencer K. Schiff went all in on Bitcoin on the last drop below 50K, the outspoken CEO and president of Euro Pacific Capital said in a tweet Thursday. 100% of his portfolio is now in Bitcoin. Yep, calling him brainwashed. Schiff said his son sold the last of his silver stocks to raise the cash for it, he's hodling to infinity or bust. He had using the slang term in the crypto community for holding a cryptocurrency rather than selling it. Now, maybe this is, I don't think he actually put all, like, I don't think you would be, Spencer K. Schiff would be so naive as Peter Schiff's son to put all of his eggs in one basket or all of his currency into crypto, so to speak. And I imagine, like we said, all of his silver stocks, okay, I'm sure he's got a pretty significant holding of physical metals, as that personal financial cushion that so many of us think is absolutely critical in this strange time that we're in for money right now. So Schiff predicted. So by the way, during Bitcoin's price crash in 2020, Schiff predicted it would plunge by more than $4,000. At the time, Bitcoin was trading around 3,600. The price of Bitcoin quadrupled in value through 2020, eventually hitting an all-time high of 58,000 in February 2021. Last trading around $55,000 on Thursday. Yeah. Good news for crypto, good news for the generational divide. And with that, we go to our normal Good News Friday human optimization segment. Let's start by talking about sex, shall we? This is from the Wall Street Journal. Yeah, those randy motherfuckers. The future of everything in their well-being section. The headline is How Tech Will Change Sex and Intimacy for Better and Worse. Yes, I know, good news, right? We're supposed to stick to the good news, but I still think this is mostly good news. Yes, there will be sex robots and maybe even orgasm implants, but also deeper connections across distances, according to Justin Lehmiller, a social psychologist and Kinsey Institute researcher. Oh, come on, I know we've got comments on this already. Will our sex lives be better in the years ahead? Now, this is one of those weird things where, like, all right, Hunter is LMAO, yes, and Kimberly Wood is saying ew. All right. I don't know which that was in response to in particular, but here we go. So when I think about like technology and sex in general as an intersection, I have to think about it in terms of technology empowering everybody to live better. All right, outsourcing intimacy will not end well. Okay. So we have a woman saying outsourcing intimacy will not end well. Now this is like a way bigger debate, right? Sex robots, and for those of you that don't know, all right, we're in a sidebar here for a minute to the men's rights activism movement, MRAs, and the red pillars. If you haven't seen the documentary The Red Pill about men's rights advocates, it's an essential watch, absolutely. And I'm not, I'm not one of these huge sort of, woe is me, look at the men's plight kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, who dies in war? There are a lot of points that they make about disadvantages that men face in society that are just taken for granted. But here's one of the challenges in modern society that has led to the MGTOW movement, men going their own way. That is, men conscientiously deciding not to live with women or to gender. I mean, they say that there are levels of MGTOW. Like you can be, I'm base level MGTOW, as in I get the concept. 1054 says Demolition Man sex helmets to the rescue. Yeah, Demolition Man sex helmets. We might get to that point. But the full level of MGTOW is or the highest level of MGTOW. MGTOW monk is a dude who says, I don't want anything to do with women. It's not worth it. Like real life women, like I will engage with them and treat them like people, but to treat them like women, I'm not going to do that, because to me, the being a woman means nothing to me. And it's not that I'm gay, right? I'm obviously using MGTOW monk voice here. It's not because the MGTOW monk is gay and doesn't want women. It's because it's not worth it to him anymore. And I mean, think about it, like, why is divorce so expensive? Because it's worth it. Why do and in modern, a lot of the MGTOW advocates look at modern society, look at America, look at what it's done to women and feminism, and just like, do you want a woman in your life, if you want that sort of natural sexual or romantic connection? Do you want a woman who's rejected the feminine element of that and says like, yeah, no, I'm going to act like a man in all these ways, and I want equal rights, and I don't want to be, and I'm all for equal rights. For me as a libertarian, it's, if you're a human being, you're an independent consciousness, your rights are universal. It doesn't matter what gender you are, right? So I consider myself a feminist, and I did a video actually called "Libertarian Feminism is Better Than Liberal Feminism," or what did I say, statist feminism, because it's equality under the law. It's equality as rights as a human being. But that doesn't get to the problem of, or the issue of actual sexual relations or gender relations. And there are a lot of ways that women have been affected by modern society that for a lot of men, and I'm not going to weigh on this too much personally here, right? But there's a clear demographic trend that for a lot of men, what modern society has done to most American women makes them unsuitable as mates. I mean, what does a man want in a partner, right? Michelle, feminism has changed over the years. It didn't start out the way it is today. No, fair enough. Well, so feminism. I don't like the way that you're using the word, saying feminism has changed. I don't mind it. Excuse me for being a bit of a wording, definition Nazi here. Feminism, the definition, a belief that men and women are equal, that has not changed. The body of thought around it, the application of it, the activism around it, the leading advocates of it, yeah, that's changed for certain. But that core definition, then it's like, well, what does equal mean to you? And as a libertarian, that means that as a human being, your gender is irrelevant to your rights as a human being. But with sexual relationships, there are a lot of guys. So this is bringing it back to Kim's comment here about, outsourcing intimacy. Well, for most dudes, for a lot of us, we might be happier with a sex robot than, and I mean, how many just thinking about not hypotheticals, but the actual reality of so many men's experience with women in America over the last few decades, with divorce, with women using government against them, all the problems with modern relationships. How many men would have been better off if they had gone, man, when I turned 18, I wish I had just said, forget it, get me a sex robot, or the ultimate jerk off, whatever, we got a fleshlight. And, I'm not going to pursue women for relationships. A lot of them would be better off and a lot happier. And so the MGTOW movement is about helping men, sort of navigate that balance for them as individuals. And, we can weigh in on, what do we do about this as individuals? How do we move this towards a better world? But ultimately, it really doesn't matter, because technology is going to be the dominant factor in deciding this. So back to the story. Will our sex lives be better in the years ahead? I am of the general understanding of technology that technology is empowering. Fundamentally, it empowers people. Even if it empowers government, it empowers the people as a whole. And what do we want to do with it, right? Michelle, so is that all women are forced sex? Come on, what about partnership? Oh, well, see, Michelle, that's the thing about how MGTOW monks would say that modern society has really fucked up American women, is that modern American women are simply not suitable for partnership. So there are a lot of MGTOWs. Kimberly, Adam is only right if he limits intimacy to sexual pleasure. No, absolutely not. And I'm really grateful for those comments right here, because for a lot of men in relationships with women today, I totally value female companionship and romantic connection outside of sex. But for a lot of men, that's not even a possibility in America anymore. That you could find a woman who's not damaged from her experience growing up somehow in modern America, with sexual assault as it is, with modern schools the way they are. All of those things conspire to make intimate relationships of a romantic nature much less likely, much more difficult. In many ways, the control of society through the modern education system is to cripple us from being able to connect with each other that way. And romantic relationships are no different. But then you go, well, what about companionship? Well, do I need a woman to have companionship in my life? No, I mean, I can have that with men, right? You can have the friendship and intimacy and closeness with male friends without a sexual or romantic element. All right, we got a $5 super chat from I hate your pretty little face and I hope you die. Been following you for a decade now. It sucks. Tech overlords are shadow banning you. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for throwing in $5 to the Google pot to help us overcome that. I really appreciate that. It is so again back to Adam versus the Man recruiting. We are definitely looking for help with distribution and overcoming the shadow banning. So anyway, back to this. Will our sex lives be better in the years ahead? I go to this super futuristic place. Craig says, to be fair, men are damaged too. Oh, absolutely. Now, Craig, so for women, looking to men, this is why a lot of women have thank you for reminding me about that, Craig, because I don't want to make this, one side. Obviously, I'm a dude's perspective, and I don't think there's an equivalent to the sort of red pill men's rights movement or MGTOW in feminism, unless you want to say feminism itself as a movement over the years, and now this is the little male response to that. But for women looking at American men, what do women want out of men? I mean, biologically, what do women want out of men? They want healthy sperm, and they want good genetics, and they want a man who can provide and protect and provide companionship as well, and give them all the comfort and intimacy and sex that they want in a relationship. That's sort of what we're driven for. And obviously for men, there's the inverse focused on we want a fertile mate who can have kids. But a lot of people now, just in the modern era, are going, do we really want kids? I mean, I think about there's that meme with it's Leonardo DiCaprio, right? Like in a suit, strolling down a city street, like super happy, going, me every day because I don't have kids. A giant smile on his face. So, if you don't want to have kids, though, if you've decided I don't want to have kids, and that biological motivation goes out the way, 77 sons, girls just want to have fun. Don't make me start singing. So, from the women's perspective, though, when they look, here's where women have been able to reject men for a long time, and it's government. If you look at government as a larger social phenomenon, it's a select group of primarily men oppressing mostly other men. Right, as in I know this is really stereotyping like gender roles and stuff, but if you look at like employment and who's paying taxes, and it's also exploiting other men to make them less relevant. Because if the man's role is as a provider and a protector, if the government goes to modern American women and says, if you can't find a man, we will protect you and we will provide for you. We have social programs and we have security services. You don't really need a man. And the woman goes, oh God, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I don't need a man. It's optional. The only thing I need a man for is a sperm donor, and hence the rise of the single mother phenomenon. And these are some of the bigger factors that are destroying, typical or traditional. And I'm not a traditionalist. I'm not saying we need to find tradition or get back to tradition, or that tradition is some, legitimate goal in and of itself. No, absolutely not. But if you look at what traditional, families and relationships were, and then you look at what they could be in the future, and who the fuck knows? Don't worry, we're coming back to this. The intermediary step that we're in right now is really fucked up, and it's because of government putting these pressures on society as a whole that results in individuals being less appealing as mates and people being less incentivized to form healthy long-term relationships like marriages that make them capable of having the loving two-parent home that is the optimal environment in which to raise a child. But hey, that might change. Hey, if your child is born and gets a computer chip implanted in his brain on day one, maybe they don't need that. Maybe things are going to be totally different. And this is where I go back to the question, will our sex lives be better in the years ahead? I'm very, very inclined to say yes. Like, just look at right now. Look at how much better sex lives are. Well, there are different statistics about this in the era of COVID, but just in general, like compared to human sex in a state of nature. By the way, I think it was Chad Daniels, one of my favorite stand-up comedians, did this bit about his dad, where his dad was like, you know what? Screw this modern era. I would be happier in 100 years ago in America. I would be so, 150 years. Give me a cabin on the frontier and a good woman and and a simple life, and I would be so much happier than I am today. And the comic goes, really, Dad? Really? Do you remember that 150 years ago, there was not a single woman on earth who had taken a hot shower? There was not a single woman on earth who had used a tampon. I get the other primitive versions of all of this. Now that bathing was invented 150 years ago. Hey, another super chat, Kimberly Wood. Who can find a good wife? For she is worth far more than rubies. The heart of her husband trusts in her men. Go your own way or keep searching. Yeah, it's true. I mean, to find that woman today who really is in a position to be a good wife for what most men still biologically, psychologically crave, it's extremely rare. So anyway, back to this stand-up scenario. The guy's going, really, you would want a woman who who doesn't understand her period, who's never heard of birth control. The only birth control is pulling out. There's no modern medicine. Like, really, you really think that would be better? So you think back to like sex in a state of nature. It was bad. Life expectancies were very short. Sex was very dirty. I don't mean in a good way. Yeah. So now we got Tinder, and AIDS is gone. Like, I don't want to say gone, because it's not gone, but it's pretty close. Like we are about to come to the point where STDs aren't really a thing. Like it's not like we will have cured at least every major STD threat or come to practical management of it in such a way that when you have sex with another person, STDs just, you don't really think about it, right? We're kind of on the verge of that. And a lot of social control of people's sex lives through government and other authorities has been with the fear of STDs. Although the worst STD ever is going to be around forever, and that's pregnancy, right? Until and see, this is what gets me to the next step. Until we upload our consciousnesses into the robots, and then we won't need sex robots because we are sex robots. But what happens? We become somehow more enlightened creatures where the animal instincts for sex are just irrelevant. That could very well be the case. What do you do for fun? What's fun when you don't have a biological body to absorb physical sensations, right? When you're just a computer, obviously there are more intellectual pursuits that are going to be fun, exploring the universe, perhaps. Does that make sex irrelevant? Anyway, so what does the Wall Street Journal have to say about this after all? The answer depends on how we manage the risks and benefits of sex tech. The wide range of new technology that aim to enhance our experience of sex, says Justin Lehmiller, a social psychologist and research fellow at Indiana University's Kinsey Institute, who studies sexual behavior. Dr. Lehmiller is host of Sex and Psychology podcast and author of Tell Me What You Want, The Science of Sexual Desire and How It Can Help Improve Your Sex Life, which came out in 2018. Sex tech includes sex toys, wearable devices, virtual reality, and robots. Now, I have to stop and think, because one of the things, like even in this headline, deeper connections across distances. How shitty was your sex life before the phone was invented? Before you could just connect with this wider range of people over a much bigger area, right? Before that, I mean, your sex life is limited to people you can see and walk to. Right now, is the car sex tech? The phone might be when you use it for phone sex, as much as virtual reality connection, whether or not it's designed for sex, right? It has the ability to transform our lives and be a force for good, helping us explore our sexuality and boosting intimacy and connection with our partners. It also raises alarms about privacy and consent, though some sex tech is on the market now, is very expensive. And Dr. Lehmiller expects it to become much more widespread in the next 10 to 20 years. So is it about technology? Is the first section here. And then let's talk about sex toys. Some toys will be about intimacy, not just sex. Robots will be able to hold your hand or provide other comforting behaviors. Already there are devices like the Kissinger, which allow you to send a long-distance kiss to your partner. You put your lips against an artificial mouth and kiss it, and the property of that kiss gets transferred to your partner's device. There's a pillow that people are working on that will transmit your partner's heartbeat to it. So if they're sleeping in a different place, you can still be deeply connected to them because you can hear and feel their heartbeat. Well, why be separated? It seems like that more is what we'd be overcoming, rather than making our sex lives more virtual. The question will be how affordable the VR technology becomes. There's going to be the ability to customize what you're seeing, who your partner is, what activities take place. Your partner can be anyone, anywhere in the world, even an ex-partner or a deceased spouse, and you can represent yourself however you want. In my research on fantasies, I see a lot of people fantasize about becoming a different person or changing their body. This is why porn stars have really big dicks, right? It's not because dudes like looking at big dicks. One of the drawbacks of VR sex, one is how we navigate the issue of consent and whether it's appropriate to bring anyone you want into your VR sex world. Do you need someone's consent to have sex with them virtually? Of course not. No, but there are interesting issues around this, obviously. Excuse me. Comment here, Moose Girl. Sorry, I'm not going out on a date with a fucking robot. Well, no, that's the thing about robots. You don't have to take them on dates. Okay. Will we still touch each other in the future? Yes, touch is a vital human need. There's nothing that really replicates it. Skin on skin contact releases oxytocin and has physiological effects that make us feel bonded to other people, comforted and soothed. Will being stroked by a robot release oxytocin? We don't know. But assuming that robotic touch doesn't cause the same changes throughout the body and brain, then that need for touch doesn't go away. Are we all going to have sex with robots? Well, how many modern American women own vibrators? We've been having sex with little robots for a long time. We're a ways out from having the versions you see in sci-fi movies where they're going for is robots with some form of artificial intelligence that really respond to you. They'll have built-in heaters that make them warm to the touch. When they touch you, it will feel like more like a human being. They'll have a personality, and you'll be able to customize it for your needs. They'll respond to you and interact with you like they were a real person. I don't think sex robots are for everyone, but they might be an opportunity for people to have a sexual interaction. They are otherwise having difficulty having human interaction. They might help with loneliness. Mary Janeway's, and I want that pillow for when I'm away from my dog. Yeah, right. Just to have that warm heartbeat next to you. Now, I got a sidebar again for a second here because Homefront Battle Buddies is, our veterans organization for helping vets pursue alternative therapies. Well, my old friend Ben Farmer came up with the idea, and he had some really good names for this. I got it. This is our comment contest for the day. I know if you have the best answer to this, Mercedes will pick your comment. But his idea was Nookie for Nubs. Let's take disabled veterans who are romantically or sexually challenged and fly them to places where prostitution are legal so that they can experience sexual intimacy. Who wants to help make that happen? What was the other one? I put it in the conversation. Mercedes and I were chatting about this earlier. Sex for Stubs. No, what was it? Let's see. Nookie. Oh, there it is. Operation Nookie for Nubs. Cunts for Cripples. I think it was. So whatever you see, there's a nice little alliteration opportunity here. But if you can think of a better name for this program, let us know in the comments. I'm sure if you have the best one, that's what's going to win today's Producer Club membership. So the robot seems scary. What are your concerns? One big question is who is creating these programs? Are they designing them to meet our needs? Or imposing their sexual attitudes and values on us? It's going to be both. But why would you have sex with a human? And I'm asking this just sort of as a hypothetical, right? Because there are answers. Why would you have sex with another human when you can have sex with a robot that does all the good things a human does for you with none of the bad things and none of the risks? Cunts for Cribbles, I love this. Yeah. So the the challenge here is, well, the bad things and the challenges with meeting another human being in a romantic relationship and growing together. A robot can't grow, at least not the way a human can. I mean, you can upgrade and add parts, right? You can get bigger implants on a robot. I guess they're not implants. Whatever it is you want, you can customize your robot, but it doesn't grow and age like a human being. It doesn't come with those challenges, and part of what humans get out of intimate romantic relationships is that in irreplicable human connection that is grounded in the randomness of the biology of that experience. To to grow, to say I'm going to live with someone, to commit to living with someone. Vages for vets, getting there, getting there. John Smith, just call it support our troops. Will sound more. Yeah, support. We have the support. What's the support our troops organization? Fly the crippled ones and others that can't get laid out to where prostitution is legal. Yep, that's how you support our troops. So the article finishes, but we'll still have sex with another person, right? I hope so. Hopefully, we'll use these things as a complement to our intimate lives rather than a substitute for them, as a way to explore our fantasies and add novelty, but not replace human experience. GI Mary Jane, sluts for soldiers. Yeah, there's a contender. All right, so I hope that we can use this to defeat almost the arguments from MGTOW and from that extreme modern sort of anti-men, romantic relationship kind of feminism. Vagines for Marines. Thank you, 6th State, Arizona. Can't leave out the gay community in this. Oh yeah, of course, gay crippled vets. Yeah, gay prostitutes. Absolutely, no discrimination there. 1054 firmware upgrades about to take on new definition. Yeah. So again, I think all of this, 7 sons, if both partners have a brain chip, can they pass computer viruses through poly? Okay, good. I love it. Still looking for the nookies for nubs. Ben Farmer had better names. As John Smith, robot brothel. We buy sex robots and let the vets use bots when they visit Gardenia. Hey, I mean, one of the things about Gardenia is that prostitution is legal here. So if we wanted to make it happen here, that's definitely a possibility. But even like when sex robots become a thing, I think making sure that I get them to every disabled veteran who wants one, why not? I think it's going to be a pretty well worthy cause. But I hope that all of this conversation about sex and technology makes you appreciate what is unique and real about human connection. And a lot of us are so frustrated, disappointed, let down by our human relationships because of technological pressures, because of social pressures. We are being pushed away from them to rely on devices for intimacy, social media, or porn, or whatever else it is in virtual connection. But I think when it gets to the logical conclusion there, it's going to make us all the more appreciative of real human connection. All right, we got Scott Horton coming on in just a few minutes. So I'm going to skim through a couple of these human optimization headlines. You can actually BS a BSer. This from studyfinds.org. People who often fool others most likely to get duped themselves. And this is a really cool social science, social psychology kind of experiment that I would have loved to have done in college. But the idea is pretty simple, that people who are BSers, and there are different kinds of BSers, right? Persuasive and evasive. So like evasive would be like a white lie, people like that, that's different. But when you're persuading people of bullshit, telling a story like to impress them, exaggerations, embellishments, the big fish story to impress people and to help yourself fit in somewhere. People who do that are actually, it seems like less connected to reality in their heads, and thus more likely to be vulnerable to being BS themselves. So this is, to me, it's also sort of like a note of sympathy, because I fucking hate bullshitters. And people who come into my life and try to tell me stories to impress me. It's just like, No, there's nothing wrong with you. But it makes me think that for them, if you can bullshit them back, it's not because they have some malicious desire to lie and twist the truth to convince you of something against your best interest. It's just they live in a slightly less grounded reality and are more likely to fall for BS as well as a result. Futurism from their section Neoscope at futurism.com has this headline: Cancer hunting nanotech makes tumors light up. Yep, spotting tumors might become a whole lot simpler. New fluorescent nanotech seems to be able to hunt down and coat cancer inside the body, painting the tumors a brightly glowing hue that makes them easier to spot. So yeah, we're about to beat cancer too. All right, now back to the attraction issue. This is sciencealert.com. AI can now learn what faces you find attractive directly from your brainwaves. They say beauty lies in the eye of the beholder, but it actually goes far deeper than that. The concept of physical beauty resides in the mind, defined by whatever features we find attractive in other people's faces. These subtle preferences represent some of our most private inner thoughts, but that doesn't mean they can't be monitored and perhaps even predicted. Yeah, pretty exciting. On the verge of that kind of understanding. Now, if this is all stressing you out, we've got some relaxing good news from the Wall Street Journal of all places. Yeah, right. The new trend in home gardens, landscaping to calm anxiety. Definitely something we appreciate here in Gardenia. Cool to see that other people are doing it. Silver lining to the pandemic, right? As we enter the second spring of the pandemic, the quiet garden offers a place to soothe jittery nerves. Here's how to achieve your kind of hush. Other good news, if you need some hope, man uses, as crazy as we are, as much as we can figure out as human beings, we can't figure out how to not fall through the ice. Man uses Apple Watch to call 911 after falling through ice in Somersworth. Yeah, firefighters respond within 5 minutes to safely rescue skater. That's crazy, right? Ice skater fell through the ice and used his Apple Watch. There better be a TV ad about this. It'll save your life. Now, if you're still insecure about the future of humanity, fear not. Scientists are on this Daily Mail with this headline, last one in our human optimization block. Forget Noah's Ark. Scientists want to send sperm and egg samples from 6.7 million Earth species to the moon as a modern global insurance policy. I bet that's comforting, right? To protect Earth's species diversity, we presently store genetic material in vaults. Material including seeds and spores could be used to recover lost species, but gene banks on Earth are vulnerable to the catastrophes they insure against. U.S. experts propose to more safely store specimens in the lava tubes on the moon. Yeah. The deposits would be cryogenically frozen and tended by levitating robots. Yeah. The future of humanity is bright on the moon. And with that, we will come back after our guests to our remaining blocks on our Good News Friday show. Oh my gosh. Was that with the article? Or did CJ just find sperm swimming at the moon? Wow. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest today is none other than Scott Horton of the Scott Horton Show and antiwar.com. Longtime author, anti-war activist, numerous books to his name, and someone who has been an inspiration to me as someone who was smart enough to not take the path that I did into the military, and someone who has just had an epic commitment to the anti-war cause. Scott, as someone who's been in this game as long as I have, I think I'm one of the few people who can appreciate your consistency and commitment to principles and intellectual integrity. So with that, welcome to the show, brother. How you been?
Hey, thanks very much. It's really good to be with you, Adam. How are you, buddy?
Excellent. Now it's Friday. We try to keep things on good news. And I know a lot of what you've been talking about, it's over the course of your career has been really, really shitty news over and over again. And you're pointing out to people who need to hear it, just how bad things have been in ways that we don't understand. And there's so many things that are hidden from us as Americans by the US federal government about what's being done in our name and foreign policy. And I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about the good news in all of this, and maybe challenge you to see over the course of your career. And please, for the sake of our audience, give us a quick background first on your credentials and everything you've done. How long have you been in the game?
Well, I mean, I don't really have credentials. I'm a community college dropout. I don't speak foreign languages. I'm a skateboarder from Austin, but I've hated the government since I was a kid, and I've been against the war all along. I paid close attention to it all along. I've done 5,400 interviews since 2003, almost all on foreign policy this whole time. And just doing the same thing and haven't quit all along is basically the reason that I'm good on the stuff. Is just because I've been paying attention to this, especially Middle East policy, but foreign policy in general, kind of nonstop this whole time. And
yeah, no, I
wrote a couple of books
I would say your credentials are the ones you have made for yourself. And I mean, I would put you up against any foreign policy expert on U.S. militarism in the world, on facts, understanding, history, all of that. I've seen you talk. I've seen you debate. Your depth of knowledge is unparalleled.
All right. Well, thanks for that. I mean, I'll leave that to the reader and the listener, to decide. And I did write 2 books. One of them on Let's Get the Hell Out of Afghanistan, and then the brand new one is called Enough Already: Time to End the War on Terrorism. And then basically the thesis of it is that our government cannot be trusted to protect our interests. They don't give a damn about us. They have other interests. And when we give them a writ to do one thing, they'll use it as an excuse to do anything in the world that they feel like doing instead, and to our detriment, at our peril. And so we just have to call it off. We can't trust them to be our security force anymore. But it's basically an alternative history of the last 40 years. The Scott Horton version of this is all Jimmy Carter's fault, basically.
Well said. Very succinct. Well, Scott, what I want to challenge you to do today is look at the positive trends. This is something very important to me. Looking, in my worldview as a libertarian, I think of Professor Pinker, Harvard, Better Angels of Our Nature, and the Surprising Decline in Violence, and that human deaths by the hands of other human beings and violence is in a long-term historical decline that seems like a fundamental trend of human development. In your work, in looking at the modern American war machine, what positive trends do you see? What hope do you give us?
I mean, I think I agree with that whole thesis, broadly speaking, that, so morality aside, there's a time where it makes sense to just conquer and steal where the incentives play out for profit reasons or whatever. So, for example, I saw a speech where Andrew Bacevich one time said that the war against Mexico, as unjust as it was good for America. No lie. We got all that land to settle, kicked all the Mexicans off of it, and turned it into productive uses and built cities on it and dammed up the rivers and did all of our great things. And so he wasn't saying that it was wonderful and that it was, morally justified, but he was saying that there's no question that that was a net gain for the U.S. to do that, unless you think that the most kind of old school and most important conservative virtues could not survive the turn from America, from republic into empire, and that they were actually, for the net gain in financial wealth in seizing all of the Southwest and all that came with that, they also fundamentally changed the character of the country from one thing into another as well. But then in Bacevich's terms, at least, Colonel Bacevich of the U.S. Army, that is, an academic historian, that once we go overseas, forget about it. Messing around in the Philippines, messing around in Japan, messing around in the Middle East, messing around in Europe even. We should have never done any of this stuff. That was not in our interest. It wasn't our interest to create a massive empire between Canada and Mexico, but at some point, it makes no sense to wage war. We can't break off a big enough piece of China to steal for ourselves for it to be worth it in financial terms, right? Now, in older times, one village goes over the mountain to conquer the other village, seize all their stuff and their women and whatever. It's mostly pure profit. You need, there's a certain level of capital accumulation and sophistication in trading techniques before it truly makes more sense. Never mind morality, but just makes more sense for villages to trade with each other instead of fighting with each other, right? And then the world, especially since,
what did you say it takes? What does it take to make that transition?
well, I don't know. Like, I don't think there's a magic kind of equation to it or anything like that. But I guess the way I'm looking at it, and this isn't based on a bunch of smart guy books I've read or anything, you know, this is just kind of the way it seems to me, is that with the invention of the atom bomb, and for that matter, with the invention of the late 20th century, the second half of the 20th century's industrial revolution, that level of technology, you know, microchip technology and all the communication that entails, and all the advancements in the more sophisticated and more difficult channels of trade being opened all over the place that require, you know, severe amounts of stability and security to maintain, right? So Bastiat said, where goods do not cross borders, soldiers will. But so what the opposite of that is, where goods are of all descriptions are constantly crossing all borders in all directions, soldiers better not, or they're going to screw all that up, right?
Yeah, the soldiers will now better be working to protect that commerce. But Scott, I want to go back and challenge sort of a premise of what you said, and I think, well, really what the Colonel was saying, that I think you would agree on. And like, when you go to the example of a primitive society where one village goes over the hill and conquers another village, for that village it's net profit, and you were saying that it took a certain point for people to realize, hey, that's not a good idea, we're better off if we trade. But I would say that's always been true. It's just that people didn't realize that. If you didn't speak their language, it would have still been better to learn their language and learn how to trade with other peoples rather than just go kill and conquer them. And that when you say like it was good for America, Basevich is using not only an artificial collective by which to say, well, these people benefited, as opposed to all of humanity, right? I think we would say as libertarians, anytime coercion displaces voluntary relationships, there's a net negative for humanity, right? And that those sort of narrow analyses of, well, it was good for America by these economic metrics, really discounts how ethics, especially libertarian ethics, would point us towards something that would be more profitable for everyone. Is that square with your understanding of the bigger principles?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm no real economist. I'm just an anti-war guy, and I'm no like expert in ancient anthropology and things either. I can see why it would make sense, morality aside and libertarian ethics aside. And I tried to stipulate that all along here. We're talking about countries at war with each other, right? So they fight based on what they consider to be their interests. I think it's probably not right to say that it's never in their interests to fight. Sometimes it very much is in their interest to fight. Now, you're stipulating that, wait a minute, not every civilian counts as the country doing these things. And I'm in agreement with that. But I'm just talking, and Basevich was talking about the American nation state, and whether, in other words, has the American nation state had to spend $10 trillion putting down a permanent Mexican insurrection since the 1830s? No. We got the land, we kicked them the hell off of it, and we kept it, and it worked. Right. And so it was.
You're talking about the drug war when you talk about Mexico, because now you look at the death and money.
Well, no, I mean, that's entirely different. No, that's an entirely different question.
Yeah, right.
But look, I'm just saying that I'm agreeing with you that the more advanced the international capitalism, broadly defined, but the more international trade between members and citizens within different nation states and corporations within the different nation states around the world, the more stability they sow. It's the lattice work, is I think Rothbard called it at one point, of of trade and human interconnected relationships. You're familiar with the Kevin Bacon game, where every actor in Hollywood is 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It turns out every human on Earth, Adam, is 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Every human, no, really, they tested this out with all the link and network analysis. You can take a guy, give a guy an envelope, and they did the test. You give a guy an envelope in Central African Republic, and you say, okay, we've got to get this envelope to this professor in New York City in 6 shots. How are you going to do it? And he goes, okay, well, I'm going to mail it first to my cousin in Uganda because they have a good international postal system there. And I think he knows a guy who knows a guy somewhere in the West. So I don't know. And then so he sends it to his buddy in his cousin in Uganda. And his cousin in Uganda knows one guy in Cairo who knows a guy in Europe. So he sends it to him. And then the guy in Europe ends up sending it. So it only takes 5 steps to get to the professor in New York. And he goes, oh, I know a guy in New York City. He sends it to New York City and says, would you please hand deliver this to this professor? And then the guy goes, yeah, sure. And there you go. 6 steps from Central African Republic to this professor in New York. It's just 6 steps. And that goes for, you and the average Uzbek, right? That's for all of us. That's for, a Pashtun in a valley, deep in Afghanistan who's never even heard of the New World before. He's actually only 6 steps away from you or me. And so my real point, that the one I'm always trying to make, which is a little bit separate from what you're saying, but is essentially based on what you're arguing here, is my premise to then my argument is, so what the hell are we fighting for? And why is it that the United States of America is responsible for all of the worst violence on the planet? All of it is because of the United States of America. And what are we doing when we're the capitalists? We're the ones who supposedly are spreading this liberal order of this international world trade, where drop your protectionist borders and drop your tariffs, and everyone become as interdependent as possible. One human civilization, hopefully not one world state, but one civilization where the average guy in China can trade with the average guy in America, and it makes no difference to anybody else. And we can all get along and not fight. Yeah. Right. And prevent violence. And then the answer is, what's the answer? The answer is the corruption of capitalism in America. This same brilliant thing that spreads peace everywhere else. In the United States of America, there has become a small number of extremely vested and extremely wealthy and powerful interests that keep the American war machine going. And their names are arms, banking, and Israel and Saudi Arabia. And they are the enemies of the American people, and they are the enemies of mankind. And they are the reason that the U.S. government has killed more than 2 million people in the last 20 years and counting, Adam.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was there, remember?
I know.
Well, Scott, I want to just to that letter experiment. That must have been years ago, because today it's 0 degrees of separation. You say, find a professor to a guy in Uganda or whatever, Central African Republic, and say, all right, find a professor in New York. If he's got a smartphone, pulls it up, and get him on the phone just like that. We're becoming even more connected. And to the thing about borders, I want to ask if you're familiar with the studies that have said, if we eliminate borders just as barriers to the free flow of human capital, if people were able to travel for work across borders without impediment, that global productivity, the global GDP, would double. Does that have implications for what are the implications of that for what you're
I don't know. I don't know about those statistics, but I can just tell you, look, we blew about $8 trillion, $7 trillion, I guess, so far. And it'll end up, by the time we're done with the terror war, who knows? But it's not just that, right? It's also 20 years lost. It's also all the manpower of you and all your Marines in the Anbar province there who should have been hard at work,
creating legitimate goods and services that people wanted to consume instead of death and destruction.
And not just that, but our most brilliant engineers are stuck in the basement at the Pentagon designing the same stupid gun over and over and over again when they should be designing better instruments for distributing goods and services to mankind.
Life-saving technologies and space
That's
exploration,
right. So
sex
really,
robots.
I'll tell you, there was a really funny episode of The Family Guy one time where do you remember that show Sliders from the late 90s where they could travel
Yeah,
through dimensions?
yeah, yeah.
So it was the Family Guy takeoff on Sliders. And so they go to all these different dimensions, and there's one where, the dog walks the baby and whatever different funny things, right? But one of them, they go to this other dimension, and it's like the Jetsons. And it's super wealth and super futuristic, and everybody's flying around and everything's wonderful. Oh, one of them was they go to Disney character land and everything's rad, everybody's singing and there's animals, but then Walt Disney is a Nazi and he comes and he persecutes Mort the Jew and it's terrible. Anyway, but no, when they go to the future, it was really funny. When they go to the future Jetsons one, the explanation sucks and pissed me off. The explanation for why everything is so wonderful is that in this dimension, there's no religion. And so therefore, for the last 3,000 years, everyone was just a realist and an atheist and got along and produced all this material wealth. And now we live in all this wealth. And I just thought, you know what? First of all, like an 8th grader could have thought of that. Oh, wow, you don't believe in Jesus, huh? How edgy. Give me a break, right? First of all, okay? Anyway. But then secondly, think of what a killer argument they could have made there instead, Adam. That in this dimension, the reason it's like this is because somebody assassinated Woodrow Wilson. He was running for president in 1912, see? And because Wilson never got us into World War I, then that meant there never was a communist revolution in Russia. And there never was the rise of the Nazis. Huh?
He never would have been there to sign the Federal Reserve Charter either.
That's right. No central bank, no World War I, no Soviet communism, no Nazi Germany, no Treaty of Versailles in Nazi Germany, no British and French Empire in the Middle East, no creation of Israel on the bones of the Ottoman Empire. And then that means no World War II, no world communism, no Mao in China, no war in Korea or Vietnam, no American empire, no Bush family fortune, none of the military industrial complex that took America from something like a limited republic, even after the end of the New Deal years, and turned it into a world empire that makes the British Empire and all the other empires before it pale in comparison, and to the ultimate corruption of everything about our culture and society back home. But that's what we could have had. And you didn't have to abolish Jesus. All you had to do was abolish Woodrow Wilson, abolish the American empire. Yeah. That's where all our money went.
So I would challenge you just a little bit there, say you can't quite pin it all on Woodrow Wilson, because if it wasn't him, the powers that be might have put up another front man to take us down this evil path. But you're very right in pointing out that modern militarism is not simply a phenomenon of technology, but it's manifest by this unique phenomena of the American empire. What would you say to someone who says, oh, America is not an empire, we're a republic?
Well, the revolution was. That's what Garrett Garrett wrote. The book is called The People's Pottage. It's been republished as Ex America. It's 3 essays. The Revolution was Ex America and Rise of Empire, written by the great Garrett Garrett in the 40s and 50s. And the revolution is about how people keep talking about there's going to be a revolution. And I'm saying it's already come in the form of the New Deal and the end of the limited republic and the rise of the transfer of the financial center of American life from New York City to Washington, D.C.
You're not the first one I've spoken to this week, actually, who has suggested that FDR and the New Deal was the abandonment of American principles. And I would challenge you to go back to perhaps a more fundamental point in American history, that from 1786 to 1789, this country was governed legitimately, consensually, relatively speaking, through the Articles of Confederation, and that the Constitution we have today was the product of a coup that was illegally pushed against the Articles of Confederation in order to create the stronger central authority with the central bank, codified slavery, the power to tax intellectual property, and the standing armies that the founders were against. You wouldn't take it back to something perhaps more fundamental than that when looking at American history?
Well, that wasn't the question, right? And I didn't say anything about everything was fine until then.
All right. All right.
Right. I'm talking about when America turned from a republic to a world empire was under Franklin Delano Roosevelt. You know, TR was screwing around in Japan. Franklin Roosevelt created a permanent standing army that has never been disbanded since. Okay. That was when in World War II is when America inherited the world and turned into a world empire. So if you're saying when the Constitution replaced the Articles of Confederation, is that when the Republic became the empire? I mean, I guess you can draw a line wherever you want. I mean,
all right.
Look, when we invaded Mexico,
Pirates days, you know, like that was some pretty imperial shit.
Yeah, look, the Louisiana Purchase was. What's that other than a ruse? What right did Napoleon have to sell land that didn't belong to him whatsoever? That was simply a nice euphemism for the American conquest of the Midwest, right? And then they stole the northern 2/3 of Mexico. So if you've ever been in an airplane above the United States, it's an empire. You know, it didn't have to get to the water before it was an empire. Noam Chomsky calls this the saltwater fallacy. It doesn't count until you seize Guam. Now it's an empire, right? No, it already was. The limited republic was east of the Appalachians. You know, that was a long, long time ago.
All right. So I want to bring it back to the modern era. We have a comment from our producers club. Craig says, I have read Fool's Errand and enough already. Enjoy your work. How will foreign policy change under Biden versus Trump? Any difference?
Okay, well, you want to stick to the positive, so let's start with the positive. Biden actually did the most important thing in the whole world right, almost as soon as he became president, and that is he saved the New START Treaty. And the New START Treaty is the last treaty standing that limits strategic nuclear arms between the United States and Russia. And Trump was gearing up to get us in a full-scale nuclear arms race with the Russians. And, you know, the Russians, they got smart. And this is what, 3-4 years ago now. I'd have to go back and check the date. But Putin gave his version of the State of the Union address, his big speech to the country, where he debuted all new Russian nuclear weapons. He said George W. Bush abandoned the anti-ballistic missile treaty and decided to put anti-missile missiles around our country. And so we have to react against that. In fact, Oliver Stone, this is a tangent, but it's important. Oliver Stone said to Vladimir Putin, come on, man. You know how it is with the military-industrial complex. These guys don't really want to fight you. Missile defense is just a boondoggle, man. They're just ripping off Adam Kokesh for his ducats in the name of whatever. And Putin says, yeah, of course I know that. But come on, Oliver Stone, what the hell am I supposed to do, man? You're ringing my country with anti-missile missiles. I have to counteract that. It's my job. And I know it's a boondoggle. And I know you're probably not going to attack me. But come on, man. I can't base my national security strategy on that. I have to base my national security strategy on the fact that you're ringing my country with anti-missile missiles. Are we speaking the same language here or not? Right?
Well, maybe to make them speak, hold on, just to interject, maybe to make them speak the same language, Putin would have to come back and say, well, of course, well, you guys get your boondoggle, I get my boondoggle in response, and I get more money and power out of it too to serve the oligarchs.
Well, that's what he did. Right? That's exactly what he did. Right? And so he gave a speech a few years later, or a couple of years after talking to Stone, I guess, where he debuted, at least claimed, that the Russians now had a hydrogen bomb torpedo so that they could take out all of New York Harbor or San Francisco or LA Harbor in one shot if they want to, kill everyone. Also, he announced a nuclear-powered cruise missile that has essentially unlimited range and so can fly all the way around the world twice or 3 times and avoid any air defense type system and just go around and then hit whatever they want. He announced a new Russian heavy missile that was meant with multiple reentry vehicles that is meant to be launched I think there was 2 different ones. One of them was just extra heavy with even more warheads than before. And as they explained in the promotional video that he showed, could kill all of Texas in one shot. One missile could kill Corpus Christi, Houston, Galveston, Port A, San Antonio, Austin, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Angelo, and El Paso. We'd all be dead. All of us in one missile could kill all of Texas. And then they had another one, which they debuted. He showed in the cartoon. This one is meant to launch south and go around the South Pole and approach from over Mexico, where the Americans don't have any missile defenses and aren't expecting it. And then in the cartoon, they showed it landing in South Florida on Mar-a-Lago. This is what we can do. We can reach out and touch you, and you can't do nothing about it. And you escalate, you ring our country with anti-missile missiles, we escalate. And we make better and better missiles that you will not be able to counteract. It's the arms race. So what are you going to do? You want to keep making it worse or not? And now get this, Adam, this pissed me off. We have time, right?
Sure. However long you got, sir.
Whatever. I don't have a deadline now. So Obama pushes this New START treaty through. But in order to do it, he has to compromise with the Republicans. And they have, I swear to God, this is real. It's called the Nuclear Weapons Caucus in the Senate. You know, like the Black Caucus, where they're here to represent the interests of Black people. Well, these guys are here they call themselves that. They're here to represent the interests, not of nuclear power, Adam, so you can play your PlayStation, dude. They're here to represent the interests of the nuclear arms manufacturers. And it's just like any other lobby, any other special interest. We got to keep selling these H-bombs to Uncle Sam. And we got to make sure that he keeps wanting them.
Well, hey, you know what they call the pro-military industrial complex caucus in Congress, right? The Congress.
Yeah, well, that's them. So this is the worst subset of all. These are the guys who their job is fusing hydrogen atoms together over cities, okay? Or at least selling the machines to do so and then pretend that somehow they're just never going to be used and we don't have to worry about it anyway. But listen, in order for Obama to get the treaty passed, he had to make this compromise with these Republicans that they'd sign the treaty, but he would have to promise $1 trillion to completely revamp the American nuclear weapons arsenal and industry. All new factories, all new, tear them down and start all over, brand new labs for everybody at Sandia and Lawrence Livermore and all the national labs. And then by the time Obama left power, it had gone from $1 trillion to $2 trillion. And under Trump, they started calling it 3.7 or no, 2.7. So it'll be 4 by the time we're done with Biden as far as the cost of all of this. But so then the question is, and it's an extremely serious question, are we going to get to huge numbers of deployed intercontinental ballistic missiles with hydrogen bombs on them, strategic nuclear weapons, city killer weapons? At the height of the Cold War in the 1960s and 70s, we had 40,000 H-bombs. The Soviets had 70,000 H-bombs. This is enough to kill all of humanity, okay, if there had been a general nuclear war then. Now we're down to about 7 each total, with 7, about 4,000 deployed 7, each. I'm sorry? Okay.
7,000, you mean, right? From
7, yeah.
7
yeah.
and 40.
Yeah,
okay.
From 70 to 7, yeah. And then with about 4,000 deployed each, I think it is. Actually, something tells me that's not right. It's 4,000 total each, and it's like 1,500 or less than 2,000 deployed each, I think, which is still plenty to kill every city in all of Eurasia and North America, 100 times over. To destroy all of our civilizations in the event of a general nuclear war there. But so then the question is, are we going to have one of those kinds of arm races? An anti-missile missile, that's a hell of a boondoggle, but it's better than an H-bomb. You know what I mean? We don't need a world with tens of thousands of H-bombs ever again. We can't have that.
You're saying it's progress if the military industrial complex has to go to the American people and say, all right, we're still going to rip you off for trillions, but this time we'll invest it in actually defensive weaponry as opposed to destroy
Right.
the world weaponry. Okay.
Right. I mean, which would be chump change, right? As Ron Paul told the Washington Post in 2008, we could defend this country with a couple of good submarines. You kidding me? We don't need any of this, any of it. The infantry, you're fired. Go get a job. We're not invading anybody anytime soon. We'll let you know as next time we got to go liberate France from somebody. You know,
right.
this is ridiculous. We don't need this at all. But anyway, so when Trump came in, he abandoned 3 important treaties with the Russians: the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, the START Treaty, and the Open Skies Treaty. Now, the Open Skies Treaty is the one that says the Russians and the Americans are allowed to fly spy planes over each other's countries in order to reassure each side that the other is not preparing for war, right? And it's to reassure that everything is copacetic. Whatever you thought happened, don't worry. The overflight says that everything is fine, right? Your own guys say everything is fine over the other side's country. This is something that Ike Eisenhower was pushing for back when the CIA set up Gary Powers and ruined everything back at the end of the Eisenhower years. And it's something that I think it was under Bill Clinton that they finally signed. Now, the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty was the one that was keeping medium-range missiles out of Europe since Reagan and Gorbachev signed it in 1987. And what had happened was the Russians had started putting medium-range missiles in Eastern Europe, and then Reagan countered by putting medium-range missiles in Germany. And people were getting really upset about it, and then Reagan traded them away. Said, nope, I'm perfectly happy to pull all my Pershings right back out again as long as you guys will too. And that was the INF treaty that both sides signed to great effect in 1987. And you got to admit, for all of Ronald Reagan's sins, and George H.W. Bush too, in a weird kind of way, like from a certain Obi-Wan Kenobi point of view, these 2 men and Mikhail Gorbachev are the greatest heroes who ever lived. Right?
Well,
They
okay,
signed
so treaties that reduced nuclear weapons by thousands of percent. No,
down from
you're getting exactly to the next point I want to get to here with like the Biden administration versus Trump. And when you bring in Reagan like that with his motivations and you know, I as being the mechanism, the guy who happened to sit on the throne when that happened, sure, he deserves whatever credit he deserves for that. But I think about like, why would Trump do what he was doing when a lot of his populism was based on anti-war, was based on international trade, you know, things like that, de-escalation. He said that, you know, the wars were stupid, you know, pretty blunt. And I say, well, that's great that populism tastes like that now because the policy's still fucked up. It doesn't measure up to that, but that's progress. So, like with Trump,
that was just PR. He was just jerking your chain, man. You
know. Why would Trump do that? Because he wants to go back to the spending on boondoggles, right? He thinks, you know, like, hey, I'm going to get some money out of this in the long run. My rich buddies, if I get them 2.7 trillion, whatever it is, out of the Congress while I'm president, because I got rid of the treaties and now we had the excuse and then we did all this and then I get the money. Okay, so there's that motivation there. But with Biden, I don't think he's any different. With Reagan, I don't think he's any different. These are all psychopaths who made it to the top because they were power hungry and care more about maintaining their own power and their egos and their wealth.
Well, you know, I mean, the thing is,
right?
Look, I mean, as I know, you know, at some level, especially when you're talking about nuclear arms, the experts in these weapons want them under severe control. Right. They're terrified of these things. William Perry, who was the Secretary of Defense under Clinton, wrote a book about, man, we got to abolish nukes before we start using them. Holy shit, I'm scared of these things. Okay. When William Perry writes that, you should listen. And, you know, he comes from, he was a civilian in the Pentagon, a civilian wonk in the Pentagon, who came from the Pentagon through the ranks up to the top is how he became Secretary of Defense. So, you know, he was not like some outside guy from Ford or something who came to run the thing like McNamara or whatever. He's a real nerd on nuclear weapons, and he's terrified of them. Daniel Ellsberg was the same way, wrote a book called The Doomsday Machine, Confessions of a Nuclear War Planner, about how, man, we act like this is just fine, but it's not. You know, things, and to this day, or certainly back then, and I think to this day, The Russians have a system where if we bomb them in a first strike and took them all out, the computers would go ahead and launch all the rest of their missiles and kill us all too anyway, even after they're all dead, just to make the point. Is how they have it set up. The literal doomsday machine, like out of Dr. Strangelove. And so but the point being then, so like during Russiagate, at the height of this fake hoax where the FBI and CIA framed Donald Trump for treason with the Russians, and at the height of this BS scaremongering story, occasionally you could hear people like Dianne Feinstein and other of the elders of the Democratic Party in the Senate, even Charles Schumer, I think, saying, well, geez, we do want to save these treaties. You know what I mean? So you talk about they're all the same or whatever. I think Trump really was, in a sense, an aberration on some things and sided with the worst hawks on things, where I think if you grab the average member of the Council on Foreign Relations out of the Pratt House in New York and said, you want to stay in these treaties or do you want to cross them out? They want to stay in them.
Because they don't want the destabilizing effect of actual use of nuclear weapons again.
Yeah, and they're really afraid.
Their own legitimate. You're going to kill someone I love or care about.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, that's the whole thing that's kept the peace, right? Is that the leaders could all die in the war if they start one. So that's why they don't. So far, that's worked. But the moment it stops working, we're all dead, because that's how powerful these machines are. So they cause a lot of stability. But the moment that fails, then everything is at risk. Everything, literally everything.
Okay, so what is Biden's motivation to get back into the START treaty then?
I think he was afraid of what was going to happen. And I sincerely hope he gets back in the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. But see, here's the problem with the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. And this is just, I have some very good authority about what's behind all this too, from Chas Freeman, who was the former ambassador to China, went with Nixon to make friends with Mao back in 1974, real expert on all this stuff. And he confirmed this to me, that this is what it's all about. Okay. The Russians broke the INF treaty first, supposedly and probably. I guess I'll concede probably. They made a medium range missile that violates the mile limits. It goes further than this, but not as far as that. And that's in violation of the treaty. But here's the thing. They didn't deploy them in Europe. They deployed them along their frontier with China. And so then the Americans went, oh, well, you're in technical letter of the law violation of this treaty, but they were clearly not in violation of the spirit of the thing, which was about keeping these things out of Europe. Now, I know they can put one on a truck and drive it to Europe if they need to or whatever, but that wasn't the situation. And at the worst, if it was you and me running the government and all other things being equal, and we weren't abolishing it that day, all other things being equal, we would say, let's reopen the negotiations. You guys are violating the deal in order to ring your frontier on China. Let's send our best guys to talk and figure this out, right? That's what you do, right? Instead, they took advantage and said, oh, you're cheating on the deal. Well, now we're going to cheat on it too. We're going to break the deal. And now, because we want, guess what, Adam? We want to deploy intermediate, medium range missiles against China. And so we're ringing China, just like Russia is ringing China on their border, at least. We want to ring them the rest of the way around with medium-range nuclear missiles. So now we're throwing out a treaty with Russia that kept medium-range H-bombs out of Europe for 30 years and replace it with a new regime of brinksmanship and arms race when we have this same potential completely unnecessary enemy in mind. I mean, at least the Russians have a real security interest in trying to keep China from invading Siberia, which they're afraid could happen someday. There's a lot of oil and gold and stuff, and there are very few Russians, and there are very many Chinese. And so that's a frontier where things could change someday, and the Russians at least have a concern there. What concern do the Americans have? A legitimate concern do we have to pick a fight with China with medium-range nukes, especially one that would then be so important, Adam, that we have to abrogate our treaty with Russia that puts all of our friends in Europe at risk of complete annihilation?
Well, so I wanted to say something about that to put this in perspective with regards to Russia versus China, because most Americans have a very distorted view of, well, anything that they don't get taught in government textbooks. But Russia in particular, as it has been presented as the evil empire and the other global superpower next to the United States. But you compare the economies of Russia versus the United States, depending on how you count or measure it, Russia's economy is about 1/30th or 1/40th the size of the United States. Just the economic mass that is controlled by the U.S. federal government compared to Russia's government, 30 to 40 times bigger, makes Russia almost look like a satellite of the American empire rather than a competing superpower. Whereas
they sure wish
China,
it was. Yeah. See, here's the problem with that, right? They have H bombs. That's why they're not a satellite of the American empire, because they can tell us to go to hell and we can't do anything about it.
All right. So I want what you said about Biden, though. I want to go back to this because this is really to the good news of all of this. And this, if this is true, I really want to home in on this and celebrate it if it's true. But I'm not so sure that it is. But you're making the case that Biden getting back into the START treaty is primarily driven by his or the people around him or the general super classes legitimate fear of nukes.
I think they want to have a massive, essentially conventional arms buildup. They want to sell a lot of bombers and a lot of boats, but I think that they don't see, I think they do see the risk. They see all downside and no upside to having a new nuclear arms race especially in terms of quantities of weapons. Why do that? Now, look, Trump abrogated the deal, and it wasn't just his idea, right? His Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, represents hawks whose interests are, very much, wanted to see the end of that. And possibly, I don't know, maybe they really were interested in seeing a massive buildup just to sell H-bombs, that they wouldn't have mind seeing the inventories get back into the tens of thousands again, just for the dollars. I don't know if that was what was really going on there or not, but I think part of it too was, and we have quotes from Trump Jr. saying, now say we're puppets of the Russians. See, we're getting out of these treaties with them. We're inviting new members into NATO. So and this is exactly why they did it. First, they wanted to overthrow him with the 25th Amendment and all this crap. And when they couldn't do that, the FBI agents, the counterintelligence agents told CNN, well,
what's his name?
Once we knew we couldn't overthrow him, then we decided we would rein him in by continuing the investigation. We would launch the special counsel investigation and keep pretending to investigate this bogus case for another 2 years to rein him in, to prevent Trump from making nice with Russia. We'll accuse him of being a traitor with Russia. And then, of course, it worked. Not even chess, right? This is checkers. People talk about, Donald Trump's playing fourth dimensional chess. Donald Trump is getting beaten at checkers is what he's doing. And so what does he do? He goes, yeah, well, I guess we got to be hawks on Russia now. So send arms to Ukraine. Remember this, Adam? I swear to God, this really happened. You might think I'm lying, audience. I swear to God, this is true. Donald Trump was literally, actually, historically, really happened, impeached by the House of Representatives a year ago for holding up an arms deal to Ukraine temporarily.
Yeah. Don't mess with the money of the guns.
Against Russia.
All right. So I really, again, to home in on this positive part here.
The positive part. I keep forgetting my train of thought on the positive part. Look, it really is important that Biden has re-signed the new START treaty. Vladimir Putin was like, hey, man, I'm right here. Oh, and by the way, see, the deadline to re-sign it was right after inauguration. It was like 3 or 4 weeks or something. Very little leeway here. So if the Hawks had all of their talking points together and ducks in order, they might have been able to prevent Biden from re-signing the thing. But essentially, I think he wanted to do it, and there were enough powerful people who agreed with him that he wanted to get back in the treaty. And frankly, look, I mean, there's nothing more important in the world, like just in a quantitative sense, there's nothing else on the planet Earth that matters as much as America's relationship with Russia. If we have a full-scale war with Russia, humanity dies. Okay? All of northern human civilization will be dead, and about, certainly more than half of the global South also will starve to death, and humanity would be put back. Your whole optimist take would be in the trash can. And you're talking about setting humanity back 1,000 years. I mean, obviously some modern technologies would survive to help in the process, but you're talking about nuclear winter and global crop failures, a planet of 7 billion people who got to eat what they plant, in real time, constantly. You can't have years of crop failures without billions of people starving to death. And that's what would happen. So nothing else matters. Nothing else in the world matters other than America and Russia getting along and toning down any conflict that could lead to nuclear war between the two powers.
So I just want to underscore the good news in this, that what you said and what you describe as the fear that is rational that people should have with nuclear weapons and brinksmanship in the current state of affairs and all the hair triggers that would result in the destruction of life on Earth as we know it. That people around Biden, the decision-making body that is the presidency today, was able to manifest in policy that fear because those people saw that fear as more relevant than the dollar signs they would get from
I think so. Yes.
The military industrial complex's ass.
I think that's a great way to frame it, Adam. I think that's right.
So it's subtle, but with huge implications that suggest we are still moving towards more positive orientation towards these issues from, political leaders, and that they are taking these things into account. And I would like to go to like a deeper psychological level here and say that in prior generations of assholes, super class, monsters in power, that they didn't have this foresight. They didn't have this their own desire for stability for themselves, for their families, to live longer, happier lives. The life is nasty, brutish, and short mentality was still present. And in this modern era of wealth and high technology and expectations of peace and a better life, that is now the overwhelming motivator, even for the super class assholes. If that's really what this is, that Biden signing the START treaty is a manifestation of that, and it's as significant as you say, that's fucking huge.
Right. But so here's the problem though, too, man. And it's just like in all of libertarian economics, right? Is you have these conflicts between the special interests and the national interest, right? There's this whole branch called public choice theory that explains why people always vote against their best interests, and explains why people in government positions serve themselves, not any real abstract national interest, but what's good for them in their position, as it works. So it's, depending on your ethics, you call them perverse incentives or positive ones, right? But in this case, we have this kind of, as the military calls it, this self-licking ice cream cone of American military dominance, where the more they dominate, the more backlash they create and the more they crack down. And so instead of talking about the terror war, everybody read the book. It's in the background there. Enough already. Look at the case of Russia. So in 1996, when Bill Clinton started expanding NATO into Poland and Hungary and the Baltic states, a bunch of former Soviet hawks, anti-Soviet hawks, urged him not to do it. And the leader was a guy named George Kennan. George Kennan was considered the grayest of foreign policy graybeards. He had written on the sources of Soviet conduct by X for Foreign Affairs Journal in 1946, ushering in the Cold War against the Soviet Union. He was the father of the containment policy. His rival, Paul Nitze, said containment is not enough. We need a rollback of the Soviet Union back during the days of the Cold War. They were joined by Robert McNamara, the butcher of Japan, Korea, and Vietnam. And they were joined by a whole list of hawks. Robert Gates, who had been the former head of the CIA under Ronald Reagan and H.W. Bush, the guy who had failed to see the fall of the Soviet Union because he was too busy lying about how powerful they were, the guy who later became W. Bush's Secretary of Defense after Rumsfeld that Obama kept. He also agreed we should not expand NATO. And it's really surprising when you go and look at the list of these men, who many of whom were real hawks who were opposed to this. And then, so check this out. Kennan gave an interview to Thomas Friedman at the New York Times. It's called Now a Word from X. It's from almost certain 98. And again, X was his name when he wrote On the Sources of Soviet Conduct for Foreign Affairs anonymously in 46. And so Thomas Friedman says, okay, I went to interview old man Kennan and ask him why we shouldn't be doing this. And Kennan is spitting mad at him. And he's telling Thomas Friedman, he goes, listen, let me tell you something. The guys that run Russia right now, they're the ones who overthrew communism for us. They destroyed the Soviet Union. And yet, look at what we're doing. We're treating them like they're the bad guys, like they're the Soviets. They're the heroes. And now what are we doing? We're expanding our military alliance into their former sphere of influence in Eastern Europe. And we act like NATO is just some kind of social club and we're just spreading peace and stability. But you got to imagine how this looks to the Russians. We're expanding our military alliance right into their front yard, not even their backyard, their front yard. You know, Moscow is like 250 miles from the border and there's no mountains or rivers or nothing, you know, and we're setting up our military forces in the Baltic states, or making war guarantees to the Baltic states, persistently threatening to bring in even Georgia and Ukraine and all of this. And George Kennan tells Thomas Friedman, he says, I'll tell you, this is 98, okay, in the past. He says, this is what's going to happen. You're going to expand NATO, and then the Russians are going to react negatively. And then all the people who now are telling us that don't worry, the Russians won't mind, this isn't aggression against them, it's perfectly fine, will then turn and say, aha, see, the Russians are a threat, and that's why we need to do this. So now here we are defending Eastern Europe from Russian aggression. Well, guess what? Isn't that the script of the last 10 years of especially, I mean, Bush overthrew the government in Ukraine in 2004, did all those color-coded revolutions. But then the ultimate crisis precipitated by Obama's government with the Kiev coup of 2014 that led to the Russian seizure of Crimea and then a terrible war in eastern Ukraine that killed, you know, at least 10,000 people, maybe more than that, and still is low-level fighting to this day. And could lead to a real war. You know, Putin, one more thing.
I got to shout out to antiwar.com and your work there specifically for the coverage of what was going on in Ukraine in 2014, because I remember reading about that and seeing how divergent the truth was from the mainstream media. And a lot of what you do with antiwar.com, it's very simplistic, but it's so powerful and going like, look, here's the mainstream narrative, here's the truth. And it's so easy to show. I mean, at least you guys make it look easy to show the disparity there. Now, Scott, we've only got a few minutes left.
Wait, one real quick. Vladimir Putin told a European parliamentary official, whoever it was, I forget. He said, you know, we could be in Kiev in 2 weeks. Okay, that's what we're messing with here. These guys act like, and seriously, you read their studies, they talk as though we could fight a conventional war against Russia in Eastern Europe and kick their ass and it would be great. And then because it goes without saying that everybody knows we have nukes, it goes without saying we have nukes, but then Adam, it goes unsaid that, wait, they got nukes. We can't fight a conventional war against Russia without it turning into a nuclear war. But if you're writing a study for a think tank, you're not going to get you $30,000 with a take like that. And so the perverse incentives have us following exactly Kennan's warning to a T in the opposite way, following his warning as a script of what we are doing, provoking a fight. Sorry, I'm trying to wrap this up. We moved the line. We used to say if the Soviets come into Western Germany, we will fight them. The Elbe River, they've now moved the line 1,200 miles to the east, to Russia's very border with Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And then again, constantly threatening to bring in Ukraine to try to do a coup and break off Belarus. They are endangering all of humanity with this insane hawkish policy that they call defense against Russian aggression that they have obviously provoked.
All right, Scott, we got just a few minutes left, and I got 4 more questions for you.
Okay.
And the first one, hold on, get the other one that was up on screen. The first one's going to be really easy, and then the last one's going to be really hard. So the first one, where should people go? Where would you want people to buy your books?
Well, if you go to enoughalreadybook.net, that will forward you to the page at the Libertarian Institute. Where I'm the director, libertarianinstitute.org/books. It's also there. And then when you go there, there are links to about 5 or 6 different choices there. So you can get it obviously from Amazon, but it's also available from Barnes & Noble, Powell Books, Smashwords. You can read it on Scribd if you have an account on Scribd. And, you know, we have it as many ways as we can. And I'm working on the audiobook, but it's taken me forever. But there will be an audiobook of Enough Already as well.
All right. Next question on screen. You've been trolled. The Intermediate Range Missile Treaty. Wouldn't our drones be a violation since they fly inside that forbidden range?
No, because it's all about nuclear weapons only.
Okay, so it doesn't apply to drones.
No,
yeah, no, I mean, so many other questions we could get into with that. But Yemen, the other question from our producers club here is, will Biden follow through with his pullback on Yemen?
Great question. This is the other positive thing I have to say, but it's only partial credit, and we're talking a very sliding scale here. And how much time do we have?
I mean, we're at the end of the show, but I want you to finish your thoughts here.
Okay, I won't tell the story, but I'll just tell you that we've been bombing Yemen for 6 years. The U.S. has supported. Obama started in 2015. This stage of war, he was already bombing Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula since 2009. But this stage of the war started in March of 2015. And it is quite literally a war of genocide, a medieval siege campaign directly aimed at the civilian population, directed against the civilian population of the country. And hundreds of thousands of people have been killed already. At least 250,000 according to the UN, but I bet you it's 3 or 4 times that by now. And the UN says that this year, if the U.S. does not lift the siege, which they still have not lifted the naval blockade, which is in the name of keeping Iranian arms out, which is a bunch of crap anyway, the UN predicts that 400,000 children will die this year of malnutrition, starvation, famine because of this war that the United States of America is inflicting on this country. I'm telling you, man, it's as bad as Iraq War II, Adam. It's an absolute horror show. And so what Biden did was he came in and he said, all right, we're going to cease all support for the Saudis' air war, essentially. So America had been providing all the bombs, all the maintenance, all the logistics, and all the intelligence, helping them pick their targets and everything else. For a few years there, we're also refueling their planes in midair, but then Boeing sold them midair refueling tankers and they figured out how to do it themselves. So they called that off, that part of it off. And it was confirmed. I think this is true as far as I can tell. Admiral Kirby said that, yes, the president ordered it and we are applying it. That means we have ceased all resupply, all maintenance, logistics, and intelligence targeting and every other bit of that we were contributing to the Saudi war, which is, of course, confirming that that support had continued all of that time up until then, which we really knew, but it was nice to have further confirmation of that, more recent confirmation of that. And then they said, and people, I think, were a little too cynical about this part of it, although it remains to be seen, of course. But Biden said in his statement, well, we're still going to keep defensive support. Well, of course, all aggression is waged in the name of defense anyway, right? So that's a loophole you could drive a whole war through. However, in this case, Adam, I really do think that he meant that was essentially spin like, look, we're not throwing our allies under the bus. We're not leaving the Saudis high and dry. We're going to keep we're going to send them Patriot missiles, Aegis radars, and machine guns, and anti-drone tech, Iron Dome tech, in order to prevent any Houthi attacks across the border into Saudi Arabia, any air attacks like that.
Okay,
in order
so
to
Scott,
essentially excuse the fact that they were ceasing support for the offensive war. We're still going to help them defend themselves. But then here's the real rub. The Brits are still helping them. The Brits are still resupplying them and filling in the gaps where the Americans were. And of course, all this time they've been flying American F-15s, but also British Typhoons. And so
and the
now
money
they're just
comes from the same places fundamentally.
Yep. And then the naval blockade persists in the U.S. They've denied all along. People go, Scott Horton, you always say the U.S. is enforcing a blockade there. What's the evidence of that? Well, I don't know. Why don't you look at who's confiscating people's ships outside the coast? They don't announce that's their policy, but it clearly is their policy to help the Saudis enforce this blockade, including against international trade of civilian goods, food, and everything else this whole time. And of course, as long as the war is still ongoing and the Saudis haven't quit and Biden's not making them quit, as long as the war is still ongoing, then they have to, quote unquote, have to keep the naval blockade because Iran could send weapons to the Houthis, which is the excuse for the war in the first place. So until the American people seriously prioritize this and demand that, and look, I have to tell you this, okay? I'm not a big believer in people power and democratic politics and stuff like that. I understand how the power elite work in America, but it is true that the only reason that Biden backed off of this war at all is because of the Quakers and Code Pink and Just Foreign Policy and, you know, a few other Muslim-based groups that I don't know the names of.
It was a conflict being swept under the rug, and you're absolutely right to say.
And it was real people who did it.
Groups that have brought that to the public attention,
right.
and not sufficiently yet. And
so that's the point. We can finish. We're not done yet. We have to all stay focused and demand that they end the blockade, that they completely normalize relations, completely lift sanctions, pour tons of food and medical aid, and do everything they can to save that country. And tell Mohammed bin Salman, your war is over. We said so. We're not just stopping. We are now demanding that you stop. And UAE too. Simple as that. Nothing less than that will do.
For anti-war activism, this might be the greatest priority right now. Absolutely. And now there's another great. We're going to skip this one. This is not the hard question. Okay. Iron Mountain, Operation Paperclip, Al Qaeda, ISIS. People have lots of questions for Scott, but Scott, and I will give you the last word to tell people where they can go to keep asking you questions and tap into your vast database of knowledge here. But I told you I'd end with a hard question. And over the course of this conversation, you have used the term "we" to refer to the U.S. military or the United States federal government about 27 times.
You were counting them?
Excuse identifying with the enemy in such a shameless, statist, rhetorically submissive way.
First of all, English is a very communist language, and that ain't my fault. It's impossible to use English without using collective nouns like that.
Well, this
without
is
being like a pedantic
little. I know it's a lot more syllables every time. Instead of saying "we," to say the U.S. government or the U.S. military. I think that's important.
I'm sorry. This is a bullshit argument. Every time I refer to the government of France, I have to say the government of France, not every Frenchman. That's fucking stupid. Okay. If I say the Israelis want this or did that, I'm talking about the goddamn ruling regime. Don't pretend that I meant every last Jew in Israel. That's fucking stupid. Okay. And I didn't say every last farmer in Iowa. I said the U.S. And if I said we or they or America or whatever, I'm obviously talking about the men and women who are making the decisions. And if anyone was confused about that, then it's deliberate to make a ridiculous, pedantic libertarian point.
I don't think anybody's confused. This is my own rhetorical Nazism coming out here because I've trained myself.
Stupid, dude. Nazism is wrong, Adam.
Instead of marijuana, because marijuana is a racist term. Cannabis, and to use accurate language. I think there's an opportunity. I think it's important
I call it
as much as we can to separate those things. That's my little rhetorical preference.
Look,
But your
here's the
point
thing.
is
Let me tell you.
totally well
Look,
taken. And there's
I'll tell
no
you what.
confusion.
I understand that where you're coming from is an honest place here. And I'll tell it to you like this. I think you'll notice this from the way I talk, whether on your show or anybody else's show. If there's ever a question about it, then I always clarify. Okay? If I'm talking to an audience that I think is apt to misunderstand what I'm saying, that Bill Clinton made someone mad, so therefore some stock trader deserved to die, then I will clarify that no, actually, that's not what I was saying, right? I was saying that Bill Clinton and the Zionists and his government had a policy that we had to stay in Saudi Arabia, and that motivated some Saudis and Egyptians to crash some planes into some buildings and kill some stockbrokers. I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying that every stockbroker is a blood relative of Bill Clinton and somehow responsible for his actions. I'm just saying that one thing came and then the other thing and then the other thing in a row for people to understand. That's all.
All right, all right. No, I appreciate it. I don't think there's any misunderstanding. You've been very generous with your time today, Scott. I really appreciate it. And what your humility in beginning this interview when I asked you to burnish your credentials, I think speaks to how you have developed your incredible body of knowledge and perspective and understanding on human history and armed conflict. And you are an invaluable resource to the peace movement, to the freedom movement, to humanity. And I hope more people take inspiration, not just from your work and your perspective that you've shared with us today, but from looking at your personal history and looking at how long you've been in this and your commitment to this, because you are clearly driven by something purer than anybody else in the game to do the right thing, to make the world a better place, to apply your intellect, to reveal the truths that people are in denial of, that are holding back humanity. So thank you for your work. The last word is yours, sir. Anything else, any thoughts you want to complete, or anything you want to promote, where people can best hook up with you, especially to keep asking you questions?
Sure. Okay. Well, first of all, thanks very much for that. I don't really deserve that, man. I'm just a guy over here. You know how it is. And antiwar.com is a hell of a lot bigger project than me. It's Dave and Jason and Eric who deserve the lion's share of the credit for what's going on there. And of course, all of our great writers are responsible for all of their great essays. I'm the editorial director. I have a lot to say about what we're about, but I don't do the lion's share of the work over there, and I wouldn't want anyone to think that I did, man. Those people all deserve the credit for that. You can read my articles there. I'm there, and you can find my show at the top of the page. I'm back on Twitter because I'm trying to flog my new book. It's Enough Already, Time to End the War on Terrorism. If you have questions for me, start there. That's everything I've ever learned that made me mad, and I remembered to put down in a book. So start there, read that, and then unlike Fool's Errand, the Afghanistan book, this is not full of footnotes. I do have a lot of citations in the text where I think they're really necessary. Otherwise, everything is described in a way where it should be really easy to Google and find if you don't believe me. And if anybody really has a problem proving anything in there or verifying that I'm right about anything, I'm happy to answer questions by email, scott@scotthorton.org. And I am back on Twitter. That's @ScottHortonShow. And then my show, you mentioned I did 5,400 interviews. They're all at scotthorton.org. And going back to 2003 there, virtually all anti-war stuff going all the way back there. And then they're also at youtube.com/ScottHortonShow. And I don't know if you saw these, Adam, at all, but I did a video series. It's a video adaptation of the book, Enough Already. And I basically sat in this chair facing the other way there, and this guy, Gus, filmed me all day, one day, going through essentially the whole book and describing essentially 14 chapters. Each section, it's 14 sections in a playlist. Each one is between 5 and 10 minutes, describing all the wars from Jimmy Carter all the way through. And so that's kind of the video adaptation of the book, and hopefully a pretty good advertisement for the book as well. And that's under the playlist section at youtube.com/ScottHortonShow. And then other than that, the Libertarian Institute, I'm the director there. Sheldon Richman, the legendary Sheldon Richman, of course, is our managing editor. And we've got the great Pete Quinones and Kyle Anzalone, and Keith Knight and Patrick McFarlane, Tommy Salmons, and all our great podcasters and all our great writers, and something for everybody there. I promise. I'm very proud that I'm fairly certain that we are now joining the ranks of the more important libertarian type institutions in the country. Obviously, Mises and Cato are giants, but I think we're, running neck and neck there with the rest of the second rung in the libertarian movement. I think we're doing pretty well. I'm pretty proud of it. So that's all at libertarianinstitute.org.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Scott. And I hope everybody can benefit from hearing your wisdom. And I think what you present is really the most beautiful part of your message is the courage in your convictions backed up with irrefutable fact. And what makes you angry and motivates you has become such a beautiful, positive message that, like I said, is really absolutely essential to moving humanity forward right now. So again, thank you for your time and thank you for your work.
Hell yeah. Thank you very much, Adam. Great to see you again, buddy.
All right. We are way over time. Wow, Scott. So it's hard to stop a man when he's on a roll like that, but goddamn, it's a lot of information. That's the thing is that when you get that background that Scott has on foreign policy, on the history of war and armed conflict, you can't help but go, I got to dedicate my life to stopping this suffering, and Scott and I at a very deeper sort of spiritual level are really kind of brothers in arms that way in being primarily motivated to end war, to end the violence of the state. Scott has taken a sort of much more intellectual, historically based approach to it, but man, what he produces, and if you can learn anything from his work, please do. All right, so we're over time on this fun Friday show. Let's get Mercedes, our co-host, comment Mercedes up on screen. See if we have any other final comments, and should we skim through the good news?
Hi. Sorry.
Is that Cora?
Yeah, my co-host. She's been here the whole time, being kind of good. There's lunch. Let's see.
All right, Mercedes, we have just, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 last good news stories. I'm going to skim through them real quick. You stop me if there's any that you're like, no, Adam, we got to come back to that next Friday, all right? So first one from Reuters, hemp burger to go, Thai consumer goods firms pile into legal cannabis trade. Yeah, in Thailand, this is happening, and it is awesome to see that they said Thais could soon be chowing down on hemp burgers, washed down with cannabis-derived drinks before freshening up with shower gel and toothpaste infused with a compound from the plant. The reason I share this as such good news is not just for the people of Thailand, but to remind us as privileged, isolated citizens of the empire here in the United States that around the world, the ending of the drug war is leading to a huge boom. And in many ways, technology is being applied to fully realize the potential of cannabis. We still got a long ways to go. Reuters.com. Web inventor Berners-Lee says fad of internet giants will pass. And again, this is one I think people should get into more if this is of interest to you. Links, as always, are at t.me/Adam versus the man. And the engineer of the internet, the inventor of the World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee, says the dominance of internet giants is a fad that does not have to endure, adding that urgent change was needed to improve a digital divide in young people's online access. I think we're coming to a great break there. Very exciting to see that the internet might be coming to its, out of this period of stagnation and being held back by the tech giants. Futurism.com. Elon Musk Cybertruck will be able to power off-grid tiny homes. Cool picture, futuristic with this. Tesla's Cybertruck is shaping up to be the ultimate off-road warrior, and it might be just as good as providing off-the-grid power as well. CEO Elon Musk took to Twitter to confirm that the Cybertruck will be able to power a camper or even a tiny home with its battery. When asked whether a user would be able to plug my tiny house into the Cybertruck to power it, Musk answered with yes. Of course, there are a lot of other ways that this is happening, but to see Musk with the Cybertruck pushing this forward, pretty cool to see. Now, way more out there, and I think this is one of the stories we have to come back to. Welcome to the metaverse. This is CNBC.com. The sci-fi dream behind Roblox's $38 billion valuation. Gaming company Roblox went public Wednesday and ended its first trading session with an eye-popping $38 billion market cap. That valuation may seem unusual given the company's financials, but the company is betting on something much bigger. Roblox is building on the metaverse concept, or virtual world where people can gather to play, work, and socialize. if this has any meat on the bones, we're going to be coming back to that story whether we like it or not. Futurism.com. Is this startup working on an actual warp drive? We've never been closer to traveling near the speed of light. Yeah. Something is making a weird noise here, and I want to make sure it's not a propane meter. No, it's not. It's snow dripping off the roof of the Freedom Factory. All right. So I'm going to look into this one some more, what we are at on the verge of a warp drive. The Atlantic.
And that one we need to come back to. I'm using my privileges. So,
Roblox and warp drive. We're definitely coming back to that. The Atlantic. Who would kidnap a space telescope? We hope pirates don't take it. One astrophysicist said NASA's new space telescope has had a rough go. Name a problem in this telescope. Meant to be the most powerful of its kind, a worthy successor to the famous Hubble has faced it. Poor management, technical errors, budget overruns, schedule delays, and a pandemic. So naturally, the people responsible for the telescope safety are now thinking about pirates. Yes. Pirates, space pirates. I'm glad that's being considered. We'll come back to it when it's a real thing. Motherboard from Vice. NASA releases audio of haunting wind and laser strikes. Oh, wait, we have a sex robot. Hold on. Sex robot. It's your sex robot making noise. Yeah, okay. NASA releases audio of haunting wind and laser strikes on Mars. Check the link if you want to get into that. Russia and China. This is from ndtv.com. Russia and China plan to build joint lunar space station. They couldn't have the story with like a picture of a 3D model. No, they just have a picture of the two flags flying next to each other. But yeah, if this happens, it said the lunar space station or the lunar station will be designed as a complex of experimental research facilities created on the surface and or the orbit or in the orbit of the moon. I think that's all you need to know for now, but we will be coming back to that story as we see more plans. Speaking of which, from CNN, China successfully launches Long March 7A rocket after failed first attempt. China successfully launched its new generation Long March 7A rocket early Friday morning on its second attempt, sending an experimental satellite into orbit. All right, well, good for the Chinese. Also, space.com. SpaceX launches 60 new Starlink satellites to orbit, nails rocket landing at sea. And it just kind of occurs to me that in the contrast between China and the United States, we can kind of say, hey, China, how do you do space? Oh, you do it the communist way? Well, in the United States, we sort of kind of do it the capitalist way. Not quite, but at least we're going to have a lot more success with semi-privatized space exploration than China through their government, unless they just keep throwing ridiculous amounts of money after it. But at some point, even government money can only buy so much. So here's to Musk's latest accomplishment, SpaceX. 60 new Starlink satellites, nails rocket landing at sea. Good to know. All right, now from NextGov, and this is one we might come back to. Critical update. Let's talk about UFOs. Yeah, we're gonna save this one. We're gonna come back to the alien story. Now, in our Understanding Nature segment, newfound super Earth alien planet whips around its star every 0.67 days. Yep. We keep getting reminders that the Milky Way's planetary diversity dwarfs what we see in our own solar system. The newfound exoplanet TOI 1685b is yet another case in point. And as you look around the universe, you will find many more cases in point, like this from ScienceAlert.com. This nearby exoplanet may have lost its atmosphere and then made a new one. Yeah, it's happening. All right. Finally, no, not finally, we got a few more. Extremely rare meteorite found in wake of spectacular UK fireball may contain the building blocks of life. This from CBS News. Fun story to get into. SF Gate, and this is just a quick one. It's something to ponder about understanding nature and our interaction with it. And I took this story as a reminder. I got to fill up my bird feeders here, especially now that it's spring. Scores of songbirds are dying across the Bay Area. Your bird feeder may be the reason why. Now, what they're looking at is really cool, that they have the ability to point out that there are a certain kind of songbird or types of songbirds that can get salmonellosis, which is quickly transmitted when they gather at bird feeders or bird baths. This is from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. said bird rescue centers in the Bay Area, Central Coast, Sierra Nevada have been inundated with calls from residents who have discovered increasing numbers of sick or dead birds at their feeders, in particular the pine siskin, a migratory finch with a frantic chattering call and mottled brown and yellow plumage. And so what's funny is, okay, so birds become infected when they consume food or water shared with other birds that already have the disease, or if they come into contact with objects like bird feeders, perches, or soil contaminated with the feces of an infected bird. As more birds gather in a single area, the risk of contracting the disease skyrockets. And so what they're doing, they're telling people to not put out bird feeders. And it's like, there's a certain arrogance in the premise of that statement, that humans putting out bird feeders is causing birds to congregate in such a way that it's having an effect on this. I have a hard time believing that. Interesting story to consider. The Bird Rescue Center also suggests keeping free roaming outdoor pets inside to reduce the possible risk of them hunting down a sick bird and contracting the bacteria. Lockdowns, shutdowns, and forced unemployment crises, not just for humans anymore. Finally, now in our good news, sea slugs lose heads to rid bodies of parasites. Japanese researchers have shown that a type of sea slug are able to self-decapitate and regrow their bodies, a discovery that could have ramifications for regenerative medicine. Yeah. The mechanism is believed to be an extreme method for the organism to rid itself of parasites. The researchers wrote in a study published in Current Biology, the green slugs have algae cells in their skin so they can feed off light like a plant until they develop a new body, which takes about 20 days. And I'm just thinking, all those heads in jars in Futurama? As soon as these guys figure this out, we'll be able to regrow bodies for everybody from Richard Nixon to Adolf Hitler. And that's our good news for the day. Mercedes, get back up on screen. Or any other final comments or closing thoughts before we sign off today?
Amber Fick says self-decapitate. Nice. And I agree.
That's a cool term. Like, hey man, it's you're looking a little parasitic there. You should do a little self-decapitation and come back to work tomorrow when you're feeling better.
I really like lobotomies, so that Slug and I are on the same level. And then there is a new comment. Hold on. Oh, it's just LOL. Okay, hold on. 1054 says birdsong don't mean I seek mate. We now know birds are trying to say, ow, my chest hurts, wake up peeps. I just like to say that birds aren't real, so that it doesn't matter about the birds dying from poisoned birdseed, because who cares about wildlife? Birds aren't real. And that's it for any relevant and then Craig's, it's your sex robot making noise. That was probably the best one yet. And that's all I have for the comments.
Thank you so much for jumping in, Mercedes, and filling in. Thank you to everybody who commented. We didn't have any better Nookie for Nubs contest entries.
Well, okay, so I had several different technical difficulties while we were Cora actually shut the computer off at one point. So
what are kids for?
I've been battling a toddler while trying to do this, so I can't go back to the beginning, which is really sad, because as a female sex worker who is also a feminist welding seamstress who wants to go to a mountain and grow a beard and never see anybody again, the beginning of the show was lit. CJ was just kept saying, you should jump in, I'm like, no, I want to hear what he's gonna say because this is fucking great. And so I'm sad that I lost all those comments because the other girls in the comment section were saying it for me. So yeah, other than that,
we'll revive this contest on Monday then. Yeah. So we're holding this contest open for the Producers Club membership. If you want to show up on our Monday show with a better name for Nookie for Nubs, Cunts for Crips, the idea of taking disabled veterans who are sexually challenged and flying them somewhere that prostitution is legal. Yeah. Fun project, right? So with that, remember, Monday's show will be starting an hour earlier. We are going from 9 to 11 Pacific to 8 to 10 a.m. Pacific time, and I'm going to be getting up 2 hours earlier here in Arizona to make the show happen at that time because we don't do daylight saving. Oh, Rob B, moist muff for mangled meat. Wow. Oh, oh, pungent. Not a very practical answer, but possibly the funnest. Does Rob B have membership in the Producers Club? If not, you do now, sir. Yes, CJ had to jump in. And anything else on your mind other than applause for that one, CJ?
Yeah, no, Rob, well done, well done. It's my last show being executive producer, so I get to at least come on for a minute and say thanks for letting me be the executive producer. I look forward to being the business manager, the guy that's going to help get this past the shadow banning. I'm going to stir a lot of people's pots with this show and in this new position and challenge them in ways. See, titles, while free and great, do come with certain responsibilities and powers and certain legitimacies to conversations. So when I say that I'm going to master that role like this role, I'm going to fight like hell as the CEO here and to really try to up everybody's game in distribution and in spreading the message here. And Adam, I will say in my new role, I'm going to challenge you like I have as executive producer in ways to expand you, in this show. You got a lot coming up in the next year, so I want to make sure that you're set up for that. Declaring yourself your own micronation in a state is going to be a really hard one to represent to some audiences, better for different audiences, but certainly one that's going to be challenging.
Your independence thing, when America did that, it was such a failure, and nobody respects American independence now. I mean, it really is a fool's errand for me to try to replicate that.
Well, and I just want to say in closing here and to sum it up, because I know we're over time, that I do appreciate the chance to be the executive producer, and I do think that Jim is more than qualified to step into this role and will do a great job, and you guys will produce some incredible content for me to work with and to represent. And I'm going to work with everybody in the core team. I want to take time to make sure that my role in relationship to them and how I can help them is going to be maximized and focus my time on really helping out what they need and then just trying to bulldoze, or should I say nuke, those barriers. That was a great show, by the way. Great guest. We need more like him on. Definitely got to have him on. But again, thank you, Adam, and I appreciate the promotion. I will say I've had my ups, my downs. You've been more than accommodating and more than understanding when I've had personal situations or days. So just to speak to the volunteering, part of this, Adam is somebody that is, it is fun to volunteer to work. It is a learning experience that if you maximize your skills in focusing for this show, we'll produce great content and spreading messages of freedom and essentially anti-bad government. I hope you have your own government, Adam. I'm a libertarian who's like, hey, as long as you have a voluntary government down there in Gardenia, more power to you. You've inspired me to change my way of thinking. So if you're out there and you're trying to figure out where's something I could put my time into, when he says he's recruiting, I would really hope that you guys would reach out again to him, Adam, at the Freedom Line. You can reach out to me anytime. We have this great website, adamversustheman.com, and we have Patreon that is really just a great way to really support the show, $1, $5, or $10, because again, that's us putting in our time to create interviews just like this for you, the audience, to have this conversation that the mainstream doesn't seem to be having with guests that are able to really truly speak their mind. You couldn't cut Scott off at all today. He's like, we're on the brink of nuclear war, folks. It was great. I want to hear more of Scott. So again, thank you to the audience as well for all your kindness. We've had our days as well, audience. I could get into it with all of you individually. There's a few of you that I really have come to appreciate as well. So I just so everybody knows, again, one more thing while I got the mic, until Adam cuts me off, I think that in the challenge of this show, it's not necessarily the censorship. I mean, that's just a byproduct of what we're discussing. If naturally anybody that's anti-freedom is going to hate the concept of freedom, I mean, individual freedom, and there's no way that this show is going to be pushed onto your local Fox News channel. So when I do say Patreon is the way to support us, it really is. That's what's going to keep the lights on in Gardenia at that Freedom Factory. You guys don't want the lights of Gardenia to go out, do you? I mean, seriously.
Solar, they're never going to go out.
Oh, well, I mean, that's when you get the solar wind guy there, right? Which, by the way, will be fun too. Last request going into this show, I'm not going to be on screen. I'm not going to be the guy he's calling for. But I will always be watching the show. So, I mean, just because, I mean, so just for the record, I'm not really going anywhere necessarily. I'm just going to be changing my time of, instead of making sure everything's lined up here, I want to be the guy that's helping build the brand to the next level. So I look forward to it, Adam. If you would have told me a year ago that this is where we'd be, yeah. Dang it. John Smith beat me to it. Oh, I got the buttons here. So in closing, in closing, I wanted to cheers you, Adam, and hit it one more time for the good old days as the executive producer. So
smoke weed every day. Smoke weed every day.
And with that, sir, we'll see you on Monday.
And with that, don't forget, go to twitter.com. Find me at Adam Kokesh for our recruiting listing there. It is the pinned tweet on my page. Email me if you want to get involved with Adam versus the Man, Homefront Battle Buddies, or the Gardenia Sovereignty Project, or any of the other wonderful irons we've got here in the fire right now. There's so much going on. It's a wonderful time to be alive. It's an honor to have the support of people like CJ. Oh, yeah, of course, cigarfederation.com, promo code Adam10 gets you 10% off there. But more importantly, AdamVersusTheMan.com. Email me again, Adam@thefreedomline.com. Looking forward to hearing from you. Mwah. Peace and love, y'all. Choose happiness and be excellent to each other.